My family forgot my 58th birthday, so I used my late husband's savings to fly to Europe. When my daughter-in-law saw my vacation photos, she publicly demanded, "Nice, but when are you going to pay the rent?" Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. The silence of the house was the first thing I noticed. It always was. On Wednesday, October 23rd, the sun rose over the Charlotte suburbs with a lazy, golden grace, the kind of light that promised a beautiful day. For everyone else in my quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, it was just another Wednesday. For me, Elena Martin, it was a landmark. 58. I lay still in my big bed, the high thread count sheets cool against my skin, and watched the light filter through the blinds. It cast stripes across the empty space beside me. It was the space my David used to occupy. On mornings like this, his absence felt less like a space and more like a crater. He would have been up for hours. The smell of coffee and bacon would be sneaking up the stairs. And on my nightstand, there would have been a single, perfect gardenia, my favorite, plucked from the bush he'd planted for our 10th anniversary. His joy on my birthday was always more radiant than my own. "It's the day my world got its sun, Lena," he'd say, his voice a low, warm rumble. "That's worth celebrating." David's been gone 6 years. The initial crushing weight of grief has softened into a persistent ache, but mornings like this sharpen it back into a blade. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. The screen was dark. I tapped it. Nothing. No notifications. No messages. It was 7:21 a.m. I knew I was being foolish. My son Alex is 31. He's a grown man with a wife, Chloe, and a demanding freelance career. Chloe is busy with her boutique and her never-ending quest to become a social media somebody. I understand the chaos of modern life. I was a nurse for 35 years. I wrote the book on chaos, but still. A simple happy birthday mom text takes 10 seconds. It's the first thing a loving son should do. It's the first thing David would have made sure he did. A memory, sharp and sweet, ambushed me. Alex's 10th birthday. He'd been obsessed with some ridiculously expensive basketball shoes. We were tight on money that year, but I worked 3 double shifts at the hospital. My feet were screaming in their casings, but I did it just to see his face light up. He'd thrown his arms around my neck and yelled, "You're the best mom in the whole universe." I had been his universe. Now, I wasn't sure I was even a distant moon. Downstairs, I made coffee, my movements stiff. I scrolled through my phone. Chloe's Instagram was already active. A video of 2 clinking mimosa glasses, light catching the bubbles. The caption read, "Brunch vibes with my boo." It was followed by a picture of her and Alex at some trendy spot in Midtown. They were smiling, Chloe holding up a new acrylic nail in a shade she'd probably call Billionaire Bordeaux. They were less than 30 minutes away, celebrating a random Wednesday, and they hadn't thought to call. A hot knot of resentment tightened in my stomach. They're young, they're busy. The excuses were worn thin from overuse. I had become invisible, a utility, the reliable foundation of their lives that they never had to look at, certain it would always be there to hold them up. The day crawled by. I tended to my gardenias, their creamy white petals a fragrant, painful reminder of David's love. Every time a car drove by, my head would lift with a foolish Pavlovian hope, only to be dashed as it continued down the street. I busied myself with small tasks. I even logged onto my bank account to pay some bills, just to feel productive. That's when I saw the first email. It was from the Myers Park Condo Association. I owned that condo. It was the first property David and I bought, back when we were young and saving. Now I let Alex and Chloe live there. I paid the mortgage, and I paid the steep monthly HOA fees. They called it the rent, which was a bitter joke. The email was a second notice. Improper balcony storage. A fine of $150 has been assessed. I sighed, annoyed. This was the third time this year. Chloe was always leaving boxes from her brand out there. I clicked Pay Now, transferring the $150 from my savings, and made a mental note to tell Alex to handle it. By 3:00 p.m., the hope I'd felt this morning had curdled into a quiet, resigned ache. This was my 58th birthday. A day of silence, punctuated only by the online evidence of my son's utter indifference and a fine for his wife's mess. A single tear slid down my cheek, hot and unexpected. I wiped it away, angry at my own weakness. I was done crying. Crying is a passive act. I was tired of being passive. I had spent a lifetime caring for others. My patients, my husband, my son. I had poured myself into them until my own cup was empty. Staring out the kitchen window at the gardenia bush, a new feeling began to take root in the barren soil of my disappointment. It was a hard, sharp seed of an idea that was terrifying and thrilling all at once. An idea that felt, for the first time in a long time, entirely my own. The shrill ring of the telephone sliced through the heavy afternoon silence. My heart did a foolish, traitorous little flutter. Maybe he remembered. The conditioning of a lifetime is too strong. A mother always answers. I picked up the receiver. Hello? Hey, Mom. It's me. It was Alex. His voice was tight with stress. The flutter in my chest died instantly, like a bird hitting glass. Alex, hi, honey. How are you? I asked, my voice automatically shifting into the familiar, concerned cadence. Playing my part. I'm so stressed, Mom. You would not believe the day I'm having, he began, and the dam broke. He launched into a saga about a new client, a big tech startup that had hired him to design their app interface. They keep changing the color palette. We're talking about minute shades of blue, Mom. Shades of blue? I'm losing my mind. I listened, making the appropriate sympathetic noises. My son was a gifted designer, but he was a child when it came to managing his life. Yeah, well, brilliant doesn't pay the bills on time, he grumbled, finally getting to the point. That's actually why I'm calling. My next payment is going to be late. And Chloe, she had a couple of unexpected expenses come up this week. My knuckles whitened on the receiver. I knew exactly what Chloe's unexpected expenses were. I had seen them on Instagram. The billionaire Bordeaux acrylics. A professional silk press that likely cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The mimosas. What kind of expenses? I asked, my voice dangerously neutral. Oh, he hedged. Stuff for her social media, a new ring light, some new serum from that fancy place in Buckhead. She says it's an investment in her brand. An investment. I almost laughed. I thought of my own investments. The down payment on this very house. Alex's college fund, which I'd maxed out. The emergency savings account that was now apparently being treated as Chloe's beauty slush fund. Anyway, Alex pressed on, sensing my hesitation. I was hoping you could help us out. Could you maybe float us a couple hundred? I'll pay you back as soon as I get paid, I swear. The promise was so familiar, so empty. It was almost comical. The loans were never repaid. They were just absorbed into the void. This was my moment to say no. My moment to ask him, do you have any idea what day it is today? The words formed in my mind, a perfect righteous sentence, but they wouldn't come out. The habit of giving, the deep instinctual need to ensure my child was cared for, was a powerful, smothering force. Yes, Alex, I heard myself say, the words of surrender. I'll transfer it now. Awesome. Thanks, Mom. You're the best. Seriously, a lifesaver. he chirped, the stress vanishing from his voice, replaced by breezy relief. Gotta run. The client is calling. Love you. The line went dead. He hadn't even waited for me to say it back. The dial tone was a monotonous, mocking hum. My invisibility was now complete. I had been erased. The confirmation was so absolute, it broke something deep inside me. The part of me that always hoped, that always made excuses, finally shattered. And in its place, something new, hard and unyielding, began to form. I placed the phone back in its cradle with a slow, deliberate motion. You're a lifesaver. The words echoed. They weren't a compliment. They were a job description. I was not a mother, not a person, not Elena. I was a function. A utility. A financial first responder for emergencies born of irresponsibility. A tremor started in my hands. It wasn't frailty. It was the hum of a high-voltage wire, a raw, furious energy coiling in my gut. The sadness hardened under the heat of my anger into something new and sharp. The kind of rage that doesn't scream, but clarifies. I stood up and began to walk through my house, taking inventory. My eyes, now painfully open, saw everything differently. The faded floral sofa we were meant to replace 5 years ago, before Alex and Chloe needed help with a security deposit on that condo. The Lenox china in the cabinet, reserved for special occasions that never seemed to justify its use, while I hosted every holiday on my everyday Corel. My home wasn't a gathering place. It was a free venue. My tour ended in my small home office. On the top shelf of the closet, tucked away, was a simple cardboard shoebox. Inside were dozens of travel brochures for Europe. The trip David and I had been planning for our 30th anniversary. He had been learning Italian from CDs, practicing phrases in the kitchen until I was weak with laughter. Mia amore, he would say, bowing dramatically. Il mio amore per te è vasto come l'oceano. My love for you is as vast as the ocean. The anniversary never came. The cancer did. The shoebox, once a symbol of a shared future, became a painful relic. Now my fingers trembled as I picked up a brochure for the Amalfi Coast, with its cliffside villages tumbling down to a sparkling turquoise sea. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, navigating to my bank's website. There were my accounts, the general savings, constantly being drained by Alex, and the other one. DM Legacy Fund, David's life insurance policy, sacred money, his final act of love to ensure I would never have to worry. I had never touched a dime. I stared at the number. What was security if you weren't living? David hadn't left me that money, so I could sit alone in a quiet house, waiting for a birthday call that never came. He had left it for me to live. I opened a new tab and typed, Luxury European Tours. I clicked on the first one. A 14-day tour of Paris, Rome, and Florence. A Seine River cruise. A private tour of the Uffizi Gallery. A pasta-making class in Tuscany. The price was extravagant, irresponsible, selfish. The voice of ingrained maternal guilt screamed in my head. What about Alex? This is reckless Elena. But another voice, a new one, quiet but clear as a church bell, cut through the noise. What about you? My finger hovered over the Book Now button. I thought of Alex's oblivious voice, of Chloe's smug entitlement, of the long, silent hours of my birthday. I thought of David's booming laughter and his terrible Italian. I clicked the button. The Book Now button led to a form. I filled it all in. My name, my address, my passport number, my movements swift and sure. Then came the payment page. I selected New Account and typed in the routing and account numbers for the DM Legacy Fund. My hand shook as I did it. This felt like a betrayal of the money's sacred purpose. But the new, clear voice in my head corrected me. This was its purpose. With a deep, shuddering breath, the first real breath I'd taken all day, I clicked Confirm Purchase. The little wheel spun and spun. Then a red banner appeared at the top of the screen. Transaction declined. Please contact your financial institution. Ref 88B fraud. My breath caught. The tremor in my hands turned into a violent shake. I stared at the words, declined, fraud. The irony was so bitter it choked me. Alex could siphon a couple hundred at a time for his wife's serums without a problem, bleeding me dry by 1,000 tiny cuts. But the moment I tried to use my own money for my own life, I was treated like a criminal. The high-voltage hum in my gut exploded into a full-blown electrical fire. I grabbed my phone and dialed the bank's 800 number. I mashed 0 until I bypassed the robotic menus, my nursing instincts taking over. I was a woman who knew how to get a human on the line in an emergency. Consolidated Trust Fraud Department, this is Michael. Hello, Michael, I said, my voice dangerously calm. My name is Elena Martin. I just tried to make a significant purchase, a trip to Europe, using my DM Legacy Fund account, and it was declined for fraud. I need you to approve it, immediately. Ma'am, I understand your frustration. An international travel purchase of this size is highly unusual for this account. We have to be cautious. Cautious, I repeated. The word felt like an insult. Michael, that account is my husband's life insurance. He passed away 6 years ago. He and I were supposed to take this trip together. He would want me to see Italy. My voice broke on the last word, a genuine unplanned crack in my armor. It wasn't a manipulation. It was the God's honest truth. The agent's tone softened instantly. The practice script fell away. Ma'am, Mrs. Martin, I am very sorry. I see. Please, one moment. There was typing. Okay. I placed a note on the account and cleared the hold. You should be able to make the transaction again in 5 minutes. I hope you have a wonderful trip. Thank you, Michael, I said, my composure restored. You've been very helpful. I hung up, waited exactly 5 minutes, and clicked Confirm Purchase again. This time, the page loaded, a splash of bright, cheerful blue. Congratulations, Elena. You're going to Europe. An email pinged in my inbox. The subject line, Your Parisian dream awaits. I leaned back in my chair. The tremor in my hands finally stilled. The rage had subsided. The sadness had retreated. In their place was a terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly magnificent sense of freedom. The foundation hadn't just cracked. I had taken a sledgehammer to it myself. My flight was in 3 days. The microclock was ticking. I had a whirlwind of things to do. I booked a car service to the airport, another delicious extravagance. I packed my suitcase with clothes I'd bought in a flurry, items chosen not for practicality, but because I liked them. A scarlet silk blouse, a pair of stylish loafers, a small, elegant, leather-bound journal. With each task, I felt another chord to my old self fray and snap. But there was one last piece of business, that HOA email. The morning of my departure, I woke before dawn. My car service wasn't for hours. I got in my own car and drove to the Myers Park condo. I was paying the mortgage on this place. I had a right to be there. I let myself in with my master key. The smell hit me first, stale wine and garbage. The apartment, which I remembered as bright and airy, was a disaster. Piles of Chloe's brand boxes were everywhere. Dirty dishes were stacked by the sink, and on the balcony, it was piled high with trash bags, the source of that improper storage fine. I felt a cold, clean rage settle over me. I took out my phone and took pictures of the trash, of the wine-stained carpet, of the pile of mail on the counter, spilling over with red-stamped envelopes. Final notice. Not just from the HOA, but from credit card companies. This wasn't just irresponsibility, this was a pigsty. I left, locking the door behind me. I drove straight to the condo management office when it opened at 8 a.m. I walked in and showed the photos to the manager. "This is unacceptable," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet office. "I am paying the $150 fine right now, but I am also giving you this." I handed him a typed, signed letter. "It's an official notice. I am the owner. My son and his wife are my tenants. This is their first and final warning. One more violation, and I will begin eviction proceedings." The manager looked from the photos to me, his eyes wide. He stamped my copy of the letter. "Yes, ma'am." "Understood." I walked out of that office and drove straight to the airport. I felt like I had just shed a second heavier skin. At Hartsfield-Jackson, the anonymity was a balm. Here, I was not a mother, a nurse, or a widow. I was a traveler. I found my gate, and with an hour to spare, I sat down at an airport bar and ordered a glass of Prosecco. It was 9:05 in the morning. I pulled out my phone and composed a text to Alex. I wanted it to be a statement of fact, not a request for permission. "Going on a trip for a couple of weeks. Talk when I get back." I hit send. A minute later, his reply came. "Okay, have fun, Mom." That was it. No questions, no curiosity. His lack of interest was the final permission slip I hadn't realized I was waiting for. He had effortlessly, obliviously let me go. Now boarding, Flight 202, nonstop to Paris. I finished my Prosecco, a fizzy toast to myself, and walked down the jet bridge. It felt like crossing a threshold into another world. As the plane ascended, the city of Charlotte shrank below, becoming a toy-like landscape. I watched until it was consumed by clouds. I was suspended between two worlds. Leaning my head against the cool glass, I closed my eyes and smiled. The moment I stepped into the crisp Parisian air, I felt as if I had walked through a portal. The sky seemed a different shade of blue, the language a melodic river of sound. It was overwhelming and utterly intoxicating. My hotel was a charming place in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, with a wrought iron balcony and window boxes spilling over with scarlet geraniums. For a moment, a wave of anxiety washed over me. What am I doing here? Alone? The old Elena would have stayed in the room, ordered room service, and hidden. The new Elena dropped her bags and walked right back out into the street. My first mission was simple: a real croissant. I found a small boulangerie around the corner, the smell of butter and baking yeast a siren song. I pointed, smiled, and managed a clumsy "Un croissant, s'il vous plaît." The baker gave me a warm, crinkly-eyed smile and handed over a pastry still warm from the oven. I stood on the sidewalk and took a bite. It shattered in my mouth, 1,000 delicate, buttery layers dissolving on my tongue. It was a taste of pure pleasure, consumed just for me. A tear of pure, unadulterated joy pricked my eye. That croissant broke the spell. For 3 days, I walked until my feet ached, fueled by espresso and a giddy sense of discovery. I let myself get lost, finding hidden courtyards and quirky shops. I bought a brightly colored silk scarf, tying it around my neck with a flair I didn't know I possessed. My visit to the Louvre was humbling. I skipped the chaos of the Mona Lisa and found myself in the quieter galleries, surrounded by dramatic, muscular sculptures. I felt a true connection, the raw emotion carved into the marble, agony, ecstasy, struggle, mirrored the turmoil I had kept locked inside myself for years. Art, I realized, was the universal language of the soul. On my final evening, I took a river cruise on the Seine. As the sun set, the boat drifted past Notre Dame, its wounded beauty still majestic. Then, as dusk settled, the Eiffel Tower came into view, When the clock struck the hour, the entire structure erupted in a dazzling, shimmering cascade of golden lights. I gasped. The entire boat gasped. I pulled out my phone and turned the camera around, framing myself against the glittering tower. My hair was a mess from the wind. My smile was wide and unpracticed, my eyes shining. I snapped the picture. Looking at it, I barely recognized the woman in the photo. She looked happy. I posted the picture on my rarely used social media account with a few simple words. Paris has my heart. I put my phone away. I didn't know what Alex or Chloe would think if they saw it. I found, to my profound surprise, that I didn't care. Their world, with its brunch vibes and HOA violations, felt a million miles away. It felt small, and for the first time in my life, I felt vast. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. A notification. Mrs. Davies liked your photo. Mrs. Davies was the head of the usher board at my church, a lovely but notoriously gossipy woman. I smiled. That was nice. Another buzz. Chloe Martin liked your photo. The smile froze on my face. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the river breeze. It was just a like, a simple, meaningless tap of a screen. So why did it feel so wrong? It felt possessive, performative, like a cat tagging its territory. It felt like a warning. I ignored the feeling, slipping the phone back into my pocket. I would not let her ruin this. I turned my face back to the glittering tower. But the chill lingered. The high-speed train cut through the French and Italian countryside, a blur of green and gold. If Paris was a delicate dream, Rome was a vibrant, chaotic reality. The sheer, unapologetic energy of the city was a shock, but this time, I was ready. Paris had taught me that I could not only survive on my own, but thrive. On my first full day, I decided to tackle the Colosseum. Standing inside that ancient arena, I ran my hand over the warm, pitted stone, trying to comprehend the sheer weight of history. I imagined the roar of the crowds, the clash of gladiators. My own quiet domestic drama seemed so small, so fleeting in comparison. The thought wasn't depressing, it was liberating. That evening, I found a small trattoria on a quiet side street. I was seated next to another woman dining alone. Her name was Judith, a retired history professor from Chicago. We ended up sharing a bottle of Chianti, talking for hours. We pour so much of ourselves into our children, into our partners, Judith mused, swirling her wine. It's easy to forget that we are the vessel, not just the contents. If you don't take care of the vessel, eventually it runs dry, or it shatters. Her words resonated so deeply, it felt as if she had reached into my chest and articulated the ache I'd been carrying for years. My phone buzzed on the table. A text message. It was from my best friend, Maria. Honey, I saw your Paris pic. Gorgeous. But is everything okay? Chloe's been posting some weird stuff. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. What do you mean? I texted back. Go look at her Instagram story. I excused myself from Judith and opened the app. Chloe's story was active. I tapped it. It was a video, shot in their condo. It panned over a pile of my mail, the mail I had seen on the counter. Then it panned to Alex, who was clearly playing a video game, though he was backlit to look like he was working. The caption, holding down the fort and handling all the adult stuff while others are living it up. Hustle? Grind family first? It was a public dig, a passive-aggressive masterpiece of manipulation. She was painting me as the irresponsible one, the one living it up, while they handled the problems I paid for. My hands were shaking. I went back to the table, my face a mask. Everything all right, dear? Judith asked. Just family business, I said. My final stop in Rome was the Trevi Fountain. It was mobbed with tourists, but the majestic beauty cut through the noise. I squeezed my way to the edge, a euro coin cool and solid in my palm. The old Elena would have wished for her family's happiness. But the woman standing at the edge of that fountain was not that woman anymore. My wish was sharp, clear, and utterly selfish. I wish for more of this, I thought, not to a god, but to myself. More joy, more adventure, more life that is unapologetically my own. I tossed the coin over my shoulder. It had already been granted. Later, I found a perfect cafe with a terrace overlooking the Spanish Steps. The sun was warm, the air sweet. I ordered an Aperol spritz, its vibrant orange a perfect match for my mood. This was the pinnacle of my journey, the feeling of pure, unadulterated peace. I took out my phone and posted a picture of my drink, the bustling steps blurred beautifully in the background. I captioned it, "When in Rome, find your bliss." I set my phone down and leaned back, a contented smile on my face. A minute later, my phone buzzed with a notification. A new comment. I picked up the phone, my smile still in place, and opened the app. And that's when I saw it. The name was clear. Chloe Martin. The 6 words beneath it shattered the perfect sun-drenched piece into a million pieces. Nice. But when are you going to pay the rent? I stared at the phone. My breath caught in my chest, hot and sharp. The cheerful sounds of the piazza, the laughter, the music from a nearby accordion, the splash of the fountain, all of it faded into a dull, rushing roar. The beautiful Roman sun felt suddenly cold, its light harsh and interrogating. I read the words again, and a third time. Nice. But when are you going to pay the rent? They sat there, stark and ugly. A piece of digital graffiti sprayed across the masterpiece of my piece. It wasn't a private text. It wasn't a desperate, worried call. She had chosen to perform her entitlement in the open. For my friends, my old colleagues, for Mrs. Davies from the usher board, for all the world to see. This wasn't a question. It was a public shaming. A digital chain, yanking me back to my place. She was reminding me of my function. You are not a person, Elena. You are an ATM, and you are late on a withdrawal. A heat rose from my chest, a furnace blast of pure, unadulterated rage. It was a righteous, biblical anger, the audacity, the unmitigated gall, the sheer, breathtaking disrespect. In my world, the one I was raised in, you handle family business behind closed doors. You don't air your dirty laundry for the whole neighborhood to see. Chloe hadn't just been greedy. She had been common. She had tried to strip me of my dignity, to reduce me to a delinquent landlord in front of everyone I knew. My first instinct, the old Elena's instinct, was to delete it, to erase the ugly words, to hide the shame, to make the problem vanish. But my hand was frozen. No. Deleting it was a retreat. It was an act of shame, and Elena Martin had absolutely nothing to be ashamed of. I had worked double shifts with aching feet. I had raised a son, buried a husband, and held my head high through sorrows that would have broken a lesser woman. I had earned this trip. I had earned this life. I would be damned if I let this entitled, ungrateful child snatch it from me. I didn't delete the comment. I didn't reply. A reply would be a conversation, and this was not a conversation. This was a declaration of war. With a shaking finger, I turned my phone off. The screen went black, but the words were still there, seared into my mind. The war would not be fought from a cafe in Rome. Oh no. This was the kind of battle that had to be fought face to face, on home soil. I picked up my glass and drained the rest of my spritz in one long, cold swallow. The bliss was gone. But in its place, something far more powerful was taking root. A cold, hard, an utterly magnificent resolve. My trip wasn't over, but my vacation was. The rest of my time in Europe passed as if I were watching a film of someone else's vacation. The final city was Florence, but I moved through it in a haze of cold fury. The rage that had ignited on that Roman terrace didn't dissipate. It cooled and solidified, hardening into something dense and heavy in my chest, like a block of granite. It fueled me. I walked through the Uffizi Gallery and stood before Botticelli's Birth of Venus. I saw not her serene beauty, but the defiant set of her jaw. I saw a woman emerging from the chaos of the sea, whole and complete in herself, unbothered by the winds trying to blow her off course. I felt a kinship with her. My phone, when I turned it back on, was a minefield. The comet had been seen. I had a text from Maria. OMG. I saw it. Don't reply. Call me. And then a phone call from Mrs. Davies. I couldn't ignore her. I picked up. Hello, Mrs. Davies. Elena, dear. Her voice was dripping with syrupy concern. I saw that comment from your daughter-in-law on your beautiful picture. Is everything all right, honey? It just seems so public. Are they in trouble? Do they need money? The humiliation was a physical blow. She had done it. Chloe had successfully painted me as the rich, vacationing mother, neglecting her struggling children. She had brought the church into it. Thank you for your concern, Mrs. Davies, I said, my voice tight as a piano wire. It's just a misunderstanding. You know how young people are with their social media. I'll handle it. I hung up, shaking with a fury so profound it made me nauseous. This was no longer just about me. Chloe had impugned my name. On the long flight home, suspended in the dark over the Atlantic, I didn't watch a movie. I didn't sleep. I pulled out my elegant leather journal and began to write. Not about Paris or Rome, about numbers. The rent on the condo was a combination of the mortgage and the HOA fees. It came to $2,500 a month. I had been paying it for 3 years, ever since Chloe had convinced Alex that freelancing required a high-status address. I did the math. $2,500 x 36 months. My hand paused. The reality was staggering. $90,000. I kept writing. The $5,000 loan for Alex's new client-facing laptop 6 months ago. The $1,200 for their car repairs after a fender bender. The endless draining infusions of 200 or 300s for groceries or utilities that I knew went to Chloe's salon appointments. I made a conservative estimate, one that didn't even include the small stuff. The total stared up at me from the page, a 6-figure sum that made my blood run cold. $115,000. Seeing it all laid out didn't make me feel foolish. It made me feel powerful. This was evidence. This was the closing argument in the case of Elena Martinverse, her own self-neglect. And the verdict was in, guilty. Guilty of loving my son so much I had forgotten to love myself. Guilty of confusing financial support with emotional love. But the sentence wasn't despair. The sentence was freedom. As the plane began its descent into Charlotte, the city lights spreading out below like a carpet of scattered diamonds, I closed my journal. The plan was fully formed in my mind, sharp and clear. There would be no yelling, no tears. That was Chloe's style. Mine would be quiet, methodical, and absolutely devastating. The wheels of the plane touched down with a satisfying, definitive thud. I was home. The woman who had left 2 weeks ago, uncertain and hopeful, was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her own worth, a queen who had briefly abdicated her throne and was now returning to reclaim it. I turned on my phone as we taxied. An email was waiting at the top of my inbox. Myers Park Condo Association. Final warning. Intent to lien. They hadn't just been messy. They had stopped paying all the utilities I'd put in their name. The HOA was threatening to put a lien on my property. The Queen was home. And heaven help anyone who stood in her way. The Elena Martin who walked through the International Arrivals Terminal at Hartsfield-Jackson was a different woman from the one who had departed. The change was not in her clothes, but in her carriage. She walked with a straight-backed, unhurried purpose. Her eyes swept over the crowds without searching for a familiar face, because she knew no one was there for her. And for the first time, that fact didn't ache. It was simply a fact. The Atlanta air, thick with the humid, pine-scented perfume of home, felt heavy after the crispness of Europe. This was the air of the battlefield. The cold fury and the intent to lean email were a potent fuel. I felt no jet lag. I bypassed the taxi line and summoned a ride share. During the ride home, I saw my city with new eyes, a tourist in my own life. My house was just as I'd left it, quiet, still. As I unlocked the front door, the silence that greeted me was different. Before, it had been the silence of loneliness. Now, it was the silence of sovereignty. This was my space, my sanctuary, my kingdom. I dropped my bags in the foyer. Unpacking could wait. That night, I didn't eat a sad microwaved meal. I made myself an elegant dinner of pan-seared salmon with asparagus and lemon. I poured myself a glass of good Chardonnay, put on an Etta James record, and ate at my dining room table. Alone. Etta's soulful, powerful voice filled the quiet house. I'd rather go blind, boy, than to see you walk away from me. The song used to make me think of David. Tonight, it made me think of myself. I would rather be blind to the world than to lose sight of my own worth ever again. I slept soundly. The next morning, I woke with the sun, my mind clear, my purpose absolute. I didn't put on my retired nurse loungewear. I dressed for battle. I chose a charcoal gray pantsuit, sharply tailored, a cream-colored silk blouse, low, practical heels. My hair was pulled back in a neat, elegant chignon. I looked like a woman who chaired boards and made decisions. I looked like a woman you did not mess with. My first stop was my bank. The building was a cool, quiet temple of commerce. I sat down with a personal banker, a polite young man named Mr. Chen. "Good morning, Mrs. Martin. How can I help you today?" "Good morning, Mr. Chen," I said, my voice even and calm. "I need to review and cancel all automatic monthly transfers from my accounts." His smile didn't falter, but I saw a flicker of surprise. He tapped a few keys. "Okay, I see you have a recurring transfer of $2,500 set up here to the Myers Park Condo Association." "That is one of them," I said. "I want to cancel it, permanently." He typed for another minute. "I can certainly do that. I also see a number of smaller, repeating transfers to a Mr. Alex Martin." "Cancel them," I said. "All of them." "Effective immediately." "Yes, ma'am." His tone was now a shade more formal. He printed out a form and swiveled it around for me to sign. My hand was as steady as a surgeon's. I signed my name, a signature of emancipation. With that single stroke, I had severed the financial cord. "One more thing, Mr. Chen," I said, leaning forward. "I have my DM Legacy Fund account here as well. I need a history of all withdrawals on that account for the past year." "Of course," he typed again. "It's very quiet, Mrs. Martin. Just your large travel purchase and, let's see, one other transfer. It was for $5,000 6 months ago." My blood ran cold. "And who was that transfer made to?" I asked, already knowing the answer would be a lie. He frowned at his screen. "It was not to Alex Martin, ma'am. It was to an LLC, a Chloe Enterprises LLC." The breath left my body. The $5,000 for Alex's client-facing laptop, the money he had sworn he needed to keep his business afloat. It hadn't gone to him at all. It had gone directly into Chloe's brand. It was a calculated, premeditated lie. Alex hadn't just been weak, he had been a front, a willing accomplice to his wife's theft. Mr. Chen, bless his heart, saw the look on my face. Mrs. Martin, is everything? Everything is fine, Mr. Chen, I said, my voice like ice. Please print that transaction history for me. I'll need a copy. I walked out of the bank and into the bright Georgia sunshine, the paper in my hand. I felt 10 pounds lighter. The first phase was complete. The supply line had been cut. Now it was time to inform the dependents that their benefactor had abdicated. I sat in my car in the bank's parking lot for a full 10 minutes. The official paperwork, the cancellation confirmation, the damning $5,000 transfer to Chloe Enterprises LLC rested on the passenger seat. I didn't feel giddy. I felt a profound, unsettling calm. The kind of calm that comes after a storm, when you are left to survey the wreckage and begin the work of rebuilding. I was the storm, and the rebuilding was about to begin. I took out my phone. My hands were steady. I scrolled to Alex's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. I took one deep, centering breath, just as I used to do before walking into a critical patient's room. My voice had to be a perfect instrument, calm, firm, and entirely devoid of emotion. No anger to give Chloe the satisfaction of a fight. No sadness to give Alex a weakness to exploit. This was business. I pressed the button. It rang once, twice. Hey, Mom, what's up? His voice was casual, distracted. I could hear the faint, rhythmic clicking of a keyboard. He was working or playing a game. With him, it was hard to tell the difference. Alex, it's me, I said, my voice lower than usual, measured. I'm back in town. The clicking stopped. A pause. Oh, hey, welcome back, he said, a note of genuine surprise in his tone. Wow, cool. How was the trip? Was it amazing? Here was the first test. The old Elena would have gushed, sharing anecdotes about Paris, trying to draw him in. I suppressed it with practiced ease. The trip was mine. He had forfeited his right to hear about it. We can talk about that later, I said, my tone shutting down that line of conversation. I need to come over to the condo tonight. I want to discuss the rent situation that Chloe brought to my attention. I used her name like a key, unlocking the true purpose of the call. I watched my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was a mask of placid neutrality. The shift on his end of the line was immediate and palpable. The casual warmth evaporated, replaced by a nervous, flustered energy. Oh, he said. The word was small, packed with assumption. He thought he knew exactly what this was about. His mother had seen the comment, felt the guilt, and was coming, check in hand, to make things right. Hold on a sec, Mom. The phone was muffled, but I have the ears of a nurse who can hear a whispered complaint from across a noisy ward. I could hear his voice, distant but clear, talking to Chloe. It's Mom. She's back. She saw your comment. Yeah, she wants to come over tonight to talk about the rent. Then I heard Chloe's voice, sharp and triumphant. See? I told you that would work. What did I tell you? About time. Make sure she knows we need it by the 1st. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles were white, but my expression remained unchanged. The confirmation of their shallow, manipulative worldview didn't anger me. It simply armed me. Thank you, Chloe, I thought. You just handed me my opening statement. Alex came back on the line, his voice laced with a false, cheerful efficiency. Yeah, Mom. Tonight is totally fine. We're free. Chloe says around 7 would be perfect. Does that work for you? 7 is fine, I said. I'll see you then. I ended the call. I didn't say, I love you. He hadn't said it either. It was a transactional call, and the transaction was nearly complete. I drove home, a grim satisfaction settling over me. The trap was set. They had taken the bait with a greedy, predictable snap. They were expecting their meek, apologetic cash machine. They were preparing for a negotiation where they held all the power. They were about to be very, very surprised. The rest of the afternoon was spent in methodical preparation. I went to my office. I took the leather-bound journal from my trip out of my carry-on bag. I turned to the pages with the accounting of my generosity. Then, I printed everything. The last 3 years of bank statements, with every transfer to Alex or the HOA highlighted in yellow. The $150 fine I'd paid. The intent to lien notice. And the crown jewel, the statement showing the $5,000 transfer to Chloe Enterprises, LLC. The stack of paper was thick. It was a damning, undeniable record. I placed it all into a sleek, professional-looking black folder. This was my evidence. My case file. As 7 p.m. approached, I simply reapplied my lipstick. A deep, no-nonsense shade of burgundy I'd bought in Paris. I called it Vengeance. I looked at myself in the mirror. There were no traces of the heartbroken woman who had wept on her birthday. The woman looking back at me was a stranger, and she was magnificent. She was Elena Martin, head nurse, retired. She was Elena Martin, CEO, president, and sole shareholder of Elena Martin, LLC, and she was on her way to liquidate a bad investment. The drive to their midtown condo was like a journey into another country. I left my quiet, established neighborhood of brick homes and old-growth oaks and merged onto the glittering, chaotic interstate. This was their world, a world of style over substance, of fleeting trends and crippling rents. A world I had been subsidizing from afar. The lobby was cool and smelled faintly of some expensive, anonymous floral scent. The young man at the minimalist desk nodded at me, his eyes filing me away as residence mother. The elevator ride was silent and swift. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked tall and stern. I held the black folder to my chest. It felt solid, heavy with the weight of truth. My heart wasn't racing. It was beating with a slow, steady, powerful rhythm. I was ready. I stepped out onto the 27th floor and knocked on 27B. 3 firm, decisive raps. A moment later, the door swung open. Chloe stood there, a vision of curated casualness. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere lounge set that I knew from one of her haul videos, cost $400. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup expertly applied to look like she wasn't wearing any. Her smile was blindingly white and utterly false. She was radiating a smug, victorious energy. She thought she had won. "Elena, welcome back. Come on in," she chirped, her voice a little too loud, a little too sweet. I stepped over the threshold. My eyes did a slow, deliberate sweep of the apartment. It was filled with new things. There, mounted on the wall, was a new television, a massive screen, so thin it looked like a sheet of black glass. It had to be at least 70 inches. By the door, next to a ridiculously overpriced fiddle-leaf fig, was a new pair of men's sneakers, a riot of neon colors. Alex emerged from his office alcove. He had the grace to look slightly ashamed, his eyes darting away from mine. "Hey, Mom," he said, giving me a quick, hesitant hug. It felt like hugging a stranger. "Oh, and Mom," he said, "Chloe got you something. For your birthday." "It's late, but—" Chloe beamed, handing me a small, elegant box from a high-end local jeweler. "I just knew you'd love it," she gushed. My stomach dropped. I opened it. Inside was a glittering, gaudy tennis bracelet. It was nothing like my style. "It's a replica, obviously," Chloe said with a laugh. "But so good, right? We just had to." I closed the box. The Queen City Jewelers logo on the box was the same one I'd seen on my bank statement, the one I'd mistaken for a repair. They hadn't been repairing David's mother's ring. They had sold it. They had sold my husband's legacy and bought a 70-inch TV, designer sneakers, and this crap. "Let's sit down," I said. I ignored the plush off-white sofa. I chose a stiff, modern accent chair. It was uncomfortable, but it positioned me opposite them. I was not here to be cozy. I sat, placing my purse on the floor. Then, with both hands, I placed the black folder on the surface of their gleaming white coffee table. The sound it made was soft, but it landed with the finality of a gavel. They both stared at the folder. They thought it contained a check. I let the silence hang, letting them squirm. Then I lifted my gaze and locked it directly onto Chloe's. I didn't look at my son. This was her doing. "I saw your comment on my photo," I said. My voice was quiet, cold, and absolutely clear. Chloe's smile faltered for only a fraction of a second. She recovered, letting out a puff of air, a sound of weary exasperation. "Oh, that," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Elena, honestly, I knew you'd be sensitive. I told Alex you'd take it the wrong way." Alex shifted. "Mom, she didn't mean it like that." "You have to understand the pressure I'm under," Chloe began, leaning forward, her tone shifting into practiced victimhood. "Building a brand is so much work. My followers expect me to be real. And the reality, Elena, is that we are struggling. I was having such a stressful day, and then I see this picture of you in Italy, drinking and relaxing without a care in the world. It was just a cry for help." "Really?" Alex nodded. "She's right, Mom. It's been really tough. We can't make it without your help. We've always been able to count on you." His words, meant to be a plea, landed like an indictment. Chloe pressed her advantage. "And honestly, Elena, the trip seemed a little extravagant. All that money, when you know we're barely scraping by. It just felt a little selfish. I mean, family is supposed to help family, right? That's all I was saying." She finished, leaning back into the cushions, smug. She had laid out her case. She had reframed her greed as vulnerability, her disrespect as authenticity, and my one act of self-care as a selfish betrayal. She looked at me, expecting an apology, expecting a check. The silence in the room stretched. I leaned forward. "You're right about one thing, Chloe," I began, my voice so soft they both had to lean in. "The rent is a very serious matter. A roof over your head is not something to be taken lightly. It requires planning, responsibility, and consistent payment." A flicker of triumph in Chloe's eyes. She thought I was agreeing. "And that," I said, my voice hardening just enough to cut, "is why I have taken steps to make sure that the rent is no longer my problem." The smiles vanished. "What are you talking about?" Chloe asked, her voice sharp. "This morning," I said, "I went to the bank. I sat down with a very helpful young man, and I canceled the automatic monthly transfer of $2,500 that has been paying for this condo for the past 3 years, effective immediately." The color drained from Chloe's face. Alex looked as if he'd been physically struck. "Mom, you didn't." "Oh, but I did," I said. "I also have this." I pulled the intent to lien notice from the folder and slid it across the table. "You haven't just been messy. You've been reckless. With my property." "You can't do that!" Chloe's voice was shrill. "How could you do that to us? To your own son?" "My own son?" I repeated. "You called my trip selfish, Chloe. Let's talk about selfish." I opened the folder. Let's talk about the $5,000 Alex said he needed for a laptop, which was transferred directly to Chloe Enterprises LLC. Alex went pale. Chloe's mouth snapped shut. Let's talk about extravagant. I slid the thick stack of highlighted bank statements across the table. This is $90,000 in rent alone. This is $5,000 for your business. This is $1,200 for a car repair. This is every $2 or $300 loan you never paid back. By my conservative estimate, I've given you over $115,000 in the last 36 months. They stared at the papers, speechless. My trip to Europe, I continued, my voice dropping to that quiet, lethal tone. The trip you felt was so irresponsible, cost me less than 3 months of what I have been paying for you to live here. Less than 3 months of rent on a home that is not mine. For a lifestyle I do not lead. For a family that couldn't be bothered to call me on my birthday. I stood up. The movement felt final. So you are correct, Chloe. Family is supposed to help family, and my help is now at an end. My final gift to you both is the gift of responsibility. You are on your own. I picked up my purse. I left the folder. I left the gaudy bracelet on the table. Let them look at it. Let them count the cost. I walked to the door, my heels clicking decisively. I did not look back. I opened the door, stepped out, and pulled it shut behind me. The soft click of the latch echoed like the closing of a vault. As the elevator door slid closed, I heard it through the thick apartment door. A muffled crash, and Chloe's voice, no longer sweet, but a raw, ugly scream. You told me she'd never find out. The elevator ride down felt infinitely longer. My hands were trembling, a fine, high-frequency tremor. It wasn't fear. It was the aftershock of a seismic event. As I walked through the sleek lobby, the young man at the desk didn't look up. He had no idea he had just witnessed a revolution. The drive back to my neighborhood was surreal. The glittering lights of Midtown now looked fragile, pathetic. A beautiful, expensive illusion built on my silence. When I stepped back into my own home, the silence was profound. It was the sound of a battle won. I locked the deadbolt, the metallic clack echoing the finality of the latch at their apartment. It was over. I felt hollowed out, drained. The righteous anger that had propelled me was gone, leaving behind a quiet ache. This was a victory, but it was a victory over my own child. There was a deep, sorrowful irony in that. I had given birth to him, and tonight I had cut him loose. It was necessary, but it was not painless. I went to make tea. As the kettle whistled, my phone on the counter began to buzz. It vibrated with a furious insect-like persistence, a wall of notifications. It started with Chloe, a rapid-fire barrage of texts, each a new shade of vitriol. How could you do this to us? You are a cruel, selfish old woman. Alex is devastated. I hope you're happy. You will regret this. Don't you ever expect to hear from us again. I'm telling everyone what you did. It was a toxic sludge of blame, threats, and self-pity. Not 1 ounce of reflection. I read them with a clinical detachment, a tantrum. Then a new message. From Alex. Mom, please call me. We need to talk. His plea was somehow more painful than Chloe's rage. In it, I heard the panic of a boy whose safety net had just been incinerated. He wasn't apologizing. He was scrambling. The phone rang. It was him. The screen lit up with his picture. My thumb hovered over the green answer button. The old Elena would have answered in a heartbeat. She would have listened, soothed, and, inevitably, caved. But I was not that Elena. With a resolve that felt forged in fire, I pressed the red decline button. The ringing stopped. He called back immediately. I declined it again. Then I did something I had never done before. I pressed the power button and held it down. I slid my finger across the power off icon. The screen went black. I poured my tea. The silence in my kitchen was absolute. No vibrations, no demands, only the hum of my refrigerator and the sound of my own steady breathing. The peace was deafening. I kept my phone off for 3 solid days, a digital detox. When I turned it back on, I deleted the old notifications without reading them. In the quiet that followed, I began to rediscover my home. I sold the old floral sofa. I used a portion of David's legacy fund to buy myself a beautiful modern leather couch in a rich saddle brown. When it was delivered, I sat on it, ran my hand over the smooth, cool leather, and felt a satisfaction so deep it was almost spiritual. I called Maria. I met her for lunch and told her everything. When I finished, she put down her fork, took a long sip of her iced tea, and let out a low whistle. "Elena Martin," she said, shaking her head in admiration. "I have been waiting for this day for 5 years. That little girl had it coming, and Alex. Baby needed to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. A mother bird's got to push the chick out of the nest, even if he's a 31-year-old baby bird with a condo he can't afford." Her blunt words were a balm. "It was just harder than I ever imagined," I said. "Of course it was, honey," she said, squeezing my hand. "But look at you. You look lighter." She was right. I started planning my next trip, Costa Rica. Then one evening, exactly 2 weeks after the reckoning, my phone rang. It was Alex. My first instinct was to ignore it. But something made me pause. It was just one call. It went to voicemail. A minute later, a notification popped up. New voicemail. I hesitated, then pressed play. "Mom, hey, it's me." His voice was different. The panic was gone. The casual, thoughtless tone was gone. It was quiet, subdued, and it sounded tired. "Listen, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I get it. I wanted to tell you something. I took a job, a real one, full-time at an ad agency downtown, with a salary and benefits." He paused, and I could hear him take a shaky breath. "It's not as glamorous as freelance, but it's stable. It's a start." "Anyway," he continued, "that's not why I called. I called to say, I'm so sorry, Mom. For your birthday. For everything. For just not seeing you. I see it now, and I'm so ashamed." His voice cracked on the last word. I closed my eyes. This was not the boy in a panic. This was a man, finally reckoning with his own reflection. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything," he said, his voice thick, "but I want to fix this. I want to apologize to you properly, without anyone else around, just me. Can I please come over? I won't ask for anything. I just want to talk to my mom." The message ended. I stood in my silent kitchen. He wasn't asking for a lifeline. He was asking for a conversation. He had taken a step. With a heart full of caution, but also a tiny stubborn glimmer of hope, I called him back. "You can come over on Saturday afternoon," I said. "Just you." When the doorbell rang at 2:01 p.m., I had a pitcher of sweet tea and 2 glasses waiting. This was not a celebration. It was a parole hearing. The man on my porch looked thinner. He was dressed in simple jeans and a t-shirt. His eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a profound, bone-deep shame. He held a small bouquet of grocery store daisies. "Hey, Mom." I let him in. He stopped in the living room, staring at the new leather sofa. "Wow," he said softly. "The house looks different." "It is different," I said, handing him a glass of tea. "Things change." We sat, me in my armchair, him on the edge of the new sofa, the sleek glass table, a wide neutral territory between us. "Your voicemail said you had something to say," I prompted. The words tumbled out. He apologized for the birthday, for the entitlement, for seeing me as a solution instead of his mother. I let Chloe he started, then stopped. No, it was me. I let it happen. It was easier to let you handle things than to actually grow up. Dad would be so ashamed of me. Your father would be ashamed of the man you were. I corrected him gently. He would be proud of the man you're trying to become right now. He finally broke. Tears spilled down his cheeks. He didn't make a sound. I didn't move to comfort him. The new Elena knew this was his pain to feel. He had to own it. What happened to the ring, Alex? I asked quietly. He flinched. Chloe, she said it was just sitting in your drawer. She said you'd want her to use it. We sold it. We got $8,000. We bought the TV and the bracelet and paid off her credit cards. I'm so sorry, Mom. The truth was awful, but it was the truth. I nodded. The ring is gone, Alex, but you are not. Things with Chloe are hard, he admitted, his voice raw. When the money stopped, everything, it all fell apart. We're separating. She's moving back in with her parents. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I know I'm not asking for anything. I swear. I want my mom back. Can we ever be okay? I took a slow sip of my tea. I will always love you, Alex. You are my son. A mother's love doesn't just turn off, but our relationship, that has to change. It has to be built on something new. Not on what I can do for you, but on who we are to each other. I stood and walked to the back door, looking out at my garden. The foundation was rotten, baby. We have to build a new one. He followed me and stood beside me. How? He whispered. I pointed to a corner of the yard where weeds had taken over a bed of rose bushes. We can start there, I said. Those weeds need pulling. My back isn't what it used to be. Your father always handled that part. He looked at the weeds, then back at me, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. I was showing him a way back, not with a transfer, but with time, with shared work. Okay, Mom, he said, a small, watery smile touching his lips. Okay. The next few months were a slow, awkward dance of rebuilding. He came over every other Saturday. We worked in the garden. He told me about his new job, the struggles, the small victories. He never once mentioned money. I told him about my trip. He moved into a small, modest apartment he could actually afford. One evening, I was sitting on my new sofa, the lamplight glowing on the pages of my Costa Rica guidebook. My phone pinged, a text from Alex. Hey, Mom, just checking in. I was at the nursery today, and I saw this. It made me think of you and Dad. Below the text was a picture. It was a perfect potted gardenia bush, its creamy white blossoms full and fragrant even through the screen. My heart swelled, a feeling so warm and full I had to set the book down. I typed back my reply, my thumb sure and steady. It's beautiful, son. Bring it over on Saturday. We'll find the perfect spot for it. I put my phone down and leaned back, a real peaceful smile on my face. The house was quiet. My passport was on the coffee table, waiting. And in my garden, there was a new space, ready for something beautiful to be planted, ready for a new season of growth on a foundation of respect, built by hand from the ground up. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.